It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.
Welcome to episode 60 of the Lekker Rugby Pod. A special one where we're going to go in depth into what happened against in the game against between Ireland and France. And here to help us with that is André Pretorius with his typical video analysis, and Harry, of course, still in Mexico, having a tropical time of his life. So, welcome, gentlemen. And André, let's start with this. Let's start with you. What did we expect Ireland to play like? What was the plan for Ireland, and what did they typically do? We looked at them against Wales. So just give us an idea, a background, a bit of what we could typically have expected from Ireland, how they would have approached this game.
Good evening, MW. Hi, Harry. MW, I think Ireland came out playing exactly what we expected them to do. Be really structured, look to get kicks off 9, have a lot of aerial battles, and once they do get teams on the ropes, to really play, to keep playing on top of them, taking their gain line and deteriorating defenses and waiting for that one slip up to come and, take advantage of that. And to be fair, I think they started off well in the game. That's what they wanted to do, but the French just stuck in there long enough to kind of sow seeds of doubt in the match, in the plan that they had.
And Harry, the French?
Yeah, it's funny because you look at the stats that when the dust has settled post-match, and you would think that both teams got kind of what they wanted, and you might even think that the Irish got more of what they wanted than the French. I've gone back from 2022 and looked at that, and when territory is Irish, which clearly was in this game, when they are allowed to be in the 22, and when they have the correct ratio, because they kicked a lot, 33 times, as Andre's saying, and there's no apparent difference. You look at something else behind it, and you think it's really what the French did was everything they did, the quality was a bit higher. The tackles were a bit more dominant. The interventions were a bit better. They degraded the Irish attack. So the stats look good because you have a lot of carries and you have a lot of this and that. But over time, that 1 meter difference in carry per, in meters per carry, it accumulates, especially when the quality of that carry, if it's, Miafu, that's the size of him, Atonia, the size of these guys, is you just start to have this effect. And I thought what the French did by announcing 7-1, they tapped into the Springbok spirit, which is the 7-1 is misunderstood by all the teams that don't play 7-1. They fixate on the fact of the bomb squad coming in. The story of 7-1 isn't the bomb squad. It's not what happens at 55 minutes. It's what happens from 0 to 45 minutes, which is all the forwards that are on compete for the GPS to go red. So they want the guy in the coaching box to see that they went red. It's a competition between Sia and Ibn to see who will redline. and then the comfort that that you have all those guys coming off, you don't have to marshal yourself. You don't have to pace yourself. So the French forward starting pack, Movaka knows that Marchand is coming on exactly when Movaka is done. And so Movaka can literally play out of his skin. So it was the quality, the edge in quality of impact, collision, barge, that paid. And then the final thing is the French were switched on transition. Every time there was a lost ball that went to the French, even the one that was called back, the disallowed try, it was ominous because you thought, oh, you sat there for 6 minutes. The French infringed on purpose to not give up the 5, give you the 3, which you don't take, or you hit the poles. And 6, 7, 8 minutes, very, very tiring to resource all those rucks for Ireland. The French run away, and DuPont scores, and then you have the disallow. But it felt like, okay, it's going to take them 5 seconds to score. It's going to take you 2 minutes to almost score. That calorie deficit is going to take your legs away. And then the French also came in with a specific brief to maul, to drive, to maul, to drive. Not because that drive is going to go 80 meters and score, but it takes your legs away. Every forward would tell you, scrumming and mauling defense can sap you more than standing in a defensive line and making your tackles around pillar 1. It's that incredible grind. So I think the French had a plan, and guys, let me tell you something. It almost looked like the reverse of the quarterfinal, in that the Springboks stayed in the first half against France when they were kind of overplaying, and they were we were scoring in 5 seconds, and they were taking 2 minutes. And then by the end of the match, it looked like there was nothing left. And I know we'll get into the DuPont factor as well. But yeah, MB, I think what the French did is they said, you keep talking about the risk of 7-1. Let me show you what the risk is of opposing 7-1 when you don't have depth coming off the bench in your forwards.
Harry, I want to just ask you this. We made a video where we said we're not sure that Galtier actually understands the 7-1. And from what I've seen on Saturday, does that still ring true, or do the French now have their own Le Bomb Squad 7-1? Do they understand it? And even though it's slightly different to our approach, do they know what it's about? Do they get it?
Well, so you have to get a performance from Jegu. You have to get a forward by hook or by crook, come right in the backs. And especially if you have someone go down early in the back line, you're almost forced to show your hand. So I would just say, not so much Galtier himself, but well done, Jegu. Well done, you forwards that came on and you could place them somewhere and they were comfortable. This gets into the style of play in top 14. It gets into the depth factor. There's so many good players in the French league. And so there's people we don't know that well. And until you see them at test level, you don't know if they're a test animal or not. So Galtier wouldn't have known all these things would work out either. There's no way that Galtier would have drawn up a plan where his, generational star is knocked out of the match. And so, but 7-1 has adaptability as well. No one can make you play a certain style in rugby. You have to be forced to play a certain style. And so the French decided how the game was going to get played. Ireland did what Ireland does. It's an old settled team, except for a young guy 10. But the shape was going to be the way it was going to be. And I feel like the French said, yeah, but we're going to show you what the game will look like from minute 50 to 80. And that's when we're going to run away with it. So we're going to take your legs away from you.
Andre, being a number 10, former Springbok fly off yourself, I think a lot of eyes were on Sam Prendergast. A lot of people were saying he's not the right player. Other people are saying he's a generational player. He needs to get more exposure. Next year, this time, he's going to play so much better for having been exposed to this. Your impressions of Sam Prendergast in that Ireland lineup, number one, how did he do? Was he the right choice? Is he the right choice for the future as well?
Hindsight is 2020, India. I think we did a pod on him a couple of weeks ago, and we showed all his good qualities. You mentioned it in what you just said. He will be better for it because he was exposed to this game. And it was nice to see guys putting their arms around him afterwards, because there's a lot of pressure on 10s, and especially, playing in that position in that team, a lot of it runs around you getting into position. You're kind of playing the game for a lot of people around you as well. You've got to ensure people get into position so that you can play your game. And it's just it's one of those games. I think Harry mentioned it now. You play as good as a team allows you to play. He was under immense pressure, and you could see it where they normally play that little ball out the back, that skinny out the back, where the 10's taking that space, having people bite in and then letting the ball go. It looked different as the game went on to what it looked like in the beginning. And we'll show it on the clips as well, where once they're in motion, it's a different beast to be able to defend. But when they get under pressure and they start being static, their engage and release is a lot easier to read. Double defending becomes easier, and that's when the gain line starts working against them. And once the Irish don't get gain line, and then, most teams want gain line. Once they don't get gain line, they can't play on top of you. That takes away a big weapon in their arsenal. Then they started losing the aerial battle as well, so it took away that weapon too. And then it became a really tough game for them.
Talk to me about the French defense, Andre, under Sean Edwards. We've got the blitz defense and the umbrella defense and the connected defense and shooting up and not shooting up. And what can we call the French defense specifically? Because that's, to me, what sort of throttled the Irish team almost, at the end, so they just couldn't keep going anymore. What do we call that defense, and what makes it so good?
Effort, attitude, and work rate. If I had to put it in a nutshell, it's at points they stay they stay well connected, and they keep the space between each other. The inside becomes strong, and they push them into the sides. At other times, there's a big line speed focus from them. They get body in front. They ensure that they fight for every single centimeter that they can get. But the work rate that I saw was the one thing that stood out for me about this French defense. How the fold beat it there, the Irish pods coming around the corner, how they didn't waste numbers in rucks at unnecessary times. They got off the floor, they got off the ground as quick as possible to be part of the defense. And that was consistent throughout the game. It wasn't, there's a late charge by the Irish, I can't remember who was charging at the line, and you see 4 or 5 French defenders chasing him. The game's won. It's done and dusted. It's probably not necessary to do that, but at that level and the way that they're playing, it didn't surprise me. The consistency of their defense, I think, just it made it a difficult day for the Irish.
Harry, before we dive into the clips, the loss of DuPont at such an early stage of the game, we saw Aldred almost apoplectic about, wanting a card to be awarded. And afterwards, those players were cited, but nothing came of it. Talk to me about that incident, number one. What did we see there? Was it intentional? Was it by accident? Was it the plan to get rid of DuPont? I know I'm treading on thin ice here, but number one. And secondly, were the French taken a bit by surprise by that? Were they set back? Or did they just adapt to it with Luku coming on and playing the game of his life, I would think? Talk to me about the DuPont incident, please.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. I'll go backwards. Luku has been playing really well for a long time. A lot of people in France have been saying for ages that there should be more Luku, that he's an all-court player. His exit kicks with that whip action that he has is amazing. He can do it, even with charge down guys around. He has a settling effect. He definitely has a stronger, quicker, we can measure it, spiral pass than DuPont. DuPont's a different player. He's actually someone upon whom France has based so much of their attack that the loss of him is always going to be cataclysmic in the emotions. But that's not what happened, right? What happened was then there's a core inside that team. It just goes to more of a Bordeaux style, and it can easily adapt. And in some cases, Intermac breathes a sigh of relief because now he can play like he's designed to play in a way. Because when France plays off 9 Fourie Dupree style with DuPont, then there's a narrowness to it. It's difficult to get the third pass out to a wing. So any scraps they get, Louis Bielle-Biarrey and Pinot, when DuPont's on the field, have to do more with DuPont, like almost running sideways, making that exceptional timing pass to DuPont across the face, and they score in the corner. When it's Luku, it's more of a conventional in that he gets the ball, jumps, scrambles. He's on his knees, but he gets the ball from base out to 10, out to 12. He can make the Aaron Smith pass. He can miss a guy, and it's easy to catch ball. So you can look around while you're catching it, as opposed to sometimes DuPont's passes are a little bit scrambly. So different players, generational talent, DuPont. But the dependence on one player can affect a team over 3 or 4 years. And, the other sports we can use as analogies. A point guard in basketball at NBA, if he's always pounding the ball into the court and everyone's looking at him and he's the author of your offense, then when he goes away, who's the scorer? When the French lost DuPont this time, it went back to what I would call normal rugby, which is Luku just gives you great service, quick. His hair's on fire to get to the ruck. There were also some zero ruck attacks for France, but he just gets there. And if you give Intermac and the guys outside him, that extra 0.5 seconds, it can be really problematic for a defensive system. So that's the first thing. On the injury itself, we've been talking about how the Irish clean once crock roll was outlawed. And now that refs are looking at that, they've never had the power at the clean that some other teams have. The French and our box, the ability of one man to take a man. Malcolm Marx can pick you up and move you, and he can do it clean. But the Irish don't have, besides sort of a Porter in terms of squat, strength. They don't have those guys who can do that. So they end up using a lot more clever rucking. DuPont said before the match, the Irish don't ruck clean. They ruck dirty. Like, he set the mind of the referee, and then ironically, he's the one who gets hurt. It's not intentionally dirty. It's not filthy. It's just you have to ref it. And what the Irish do is, the windshield wiper clean, which is they go to a ruck, they get in, they go through the gate, so it's legal. They go as far as they can inside that madness, inside the chipping machine, the wood chipping machine, but they keep working. So Ty Byrne has done that for ages. He gets in there and he keeps working. He's trying to find an arm, a leg, a rib to attach to. All that's legal. But they have the barge, so people are coming in behind and giving you a little more shunting power. It's like railroad cars being shoved up the track. So Porter comes in and he does that. It's dynamic. They're also supposed to keep their legs moving, almost like you're doing a plank or like a scrum machine. You get in there and just keep going. That is the genius of going 3, 4, 5 rucks, because the Irish depend on more rucks to get their attack going, because they don't have gain line monsters. They don't have Jasper Visa. They don't have Artie Surveyor to just churn you. So they have to do that. But when you do that, there's so many variables now. So now you have Ty Burns, big body, coming through, legs moving in some kind of, almost clockwise and counterclockwise motion. And then you have a prop coming in who's very strong and has a great deal of impact. And it pushes him onto the limb of Antoine DuPont. Horrible to see. Nobody wants to see that. It's horrific to see it. It reminds us of other incidents. Pieter-Steph du Toit red carded against France because he got pushed by Quagga Smith. And what refs have done, and I think Angus Gardner was right on here, and why the reporting to the citing commissioner ultimately failed, they just released it that he's not cited and is not going to be charged, is that when you analyze what Porter did, so what did you see, Andrew Porter? He did what he's supposed to do. Ty Byrne, what were you doing? What did you see? He did what he's supposed to do. You shouldn't punish Pieter-Steph du Toit for what Quagga Smith does when Quagga Smith did nothing wrong and Pieter-Steph did nothing wrong. So I think we're getting away from this, oh, well, someone got hurt, so someone has to be cited. That's not rugby. We have to say, did someone do something wrong? Now we can step back, and we shouldn't litigate or legislate off of one bad thing, but we can talk about what the ruck should look like. And if we keep having trouble with what that looks like, then we can talk about it. But we shouldn't say, one incident, therefore.
Well, talking about losing players, that's not the DuPont factor. But Ireland lost Lowe just before the game started in the warm-up. I mean, how much of an effect did that have on the Irish team?
I thought it was huge, actually. Number one, so I think Ireland is too young and too old at the same time. You have Peter O'Mahony, Cian Healy, wonderful servants. It was emotional to see them, on their last time. But I thought, man for man, the French pack beat them. And I think you can look at a blind side always. When anyone's bullied on a team, and it wasn't because of Sam, it was because of the forwards. The French forwards beat the Irish forwards. And then the backs decide by how much you lose. But that's where the contest was done. I thought the French Lucies owned the day. And you could look much more at Joe McCarthy, by the way, if you're faulting someone for Ireland. You don't do what he did. It was so obvious. It was stupid. It changed the game when he goes off for that card. It ground everything down. So, yeah, I think, this game is so rich. It was such a fascinating game to watch that I watched it twice. And I saw everything differently the second time. I think when you're watching it live, you just get caught up. And you even as a neutral, I didn't really care who won. I was just into it, and I never had that moment where I decided who I wanted to win. By the way, I never went that way. I was just interested. Um, but no, I think there's ways you look at this match, and Andre, I don't know about you, but the first time I watched it, I felt like it was an explosion by the French. When I watched it the second time, I realized that first 10, 12 minutes was a defensive masterpiece. It was unbelievable. And I think you're right about it being mostly about attitude and work rate and not a lot of time on the floor. Because there's this great scene at the end. Galtier's happy, he's walking around the pitch, everyone's celebrating, the fans are gonna party all night. And Sean Edwards is filthy because of the final two tries that were let in. And you can tell that he had been giving his players everything, the full hair dryer treatment.
Andre?
I've seen clips of Sean Edwards where he's talking about kick strat with the team, and he absolutely blows up because the guys were overplaying in the wrong parts of the field. So I can just imagine what those last two tries did to what was probably going to be one of the best days within the French camp in the last couple of months, maybe a year or two. But he'd be very disappointed. And I also think it's probably the way that they conceded those tries. It's from tackles that they've been making the whole game.
Yeah.
Normal. It's a double hit. He gets onto the outside shoulder. Outside doesn't. I think it was Intermac. He doesn't. It's an early tuck. He doesn't commit to the double. It could have been a triple, and it's an easy 5-pointer. And then the quick tap. I think the boys were probably having the beers already. About that, which for the coach standing up there, it's a different story. You want to keep that scoreline, especially a defense coach.
Yeah.
But I can imagine him not enjoying that last.
So I know we're gonna get into the clips now and kind of analyze how we got there. But I would say to both you guys, I think that was the best French victory under Galtier's term. The only one that would rival it would be over the All Blacks. I think, anytime the French beat the All Blacks, it's huge for them as well. I think maybe the reason why I put this one top is because it was the changing of the guard. If Ireland wins this match, maybe comfortably, or maybe just, wins it properly, like workman-like, then the narrative stays the same. And you feel like maybe the French are wasting the greatest generation. By doing it with DuPont injured in Dublin, proper spanking, I think Galtier has responded to a lot of his critics, including me, which is why you're not getting more out of the talent. So it's very ironic that it happens with his little general off the field. And it's ominous because I don't know about you, Andre, but I love the depth at 9 for France. I love Baptiste Serrand, Lucu, Le Garrick. There's so many really good players that we might be looking at a blessing in disguise for France for a year. Develop some more of those guys. DuPont comes back, probably even more determined. And then you have, Styles.
Yeah, it is ominous signs in terms of the depth chart that they can build in that. And the problem with that is, Harry, is that if they've got 9s that are close to, or you don't want to say as good as, because that's a tall order, close to as good as DuPont, then that opens up options. If they're willing to go 7-1, that opens up options in putting DuPont in different positions in different times of games, which gives them more variation. It's more difficult to play against, and that's also something to think about.
It's almost like the Irish became too easy to prepare for. I watched this in November when the All Blacks came. They could know. I've called their attack the beautiful bicycle. Like, it has lots of little spokes, and it has to be well greased, and the pedals have to be screwed on. But if you can just drive, if you can just take a cricket bat and start smashing it, it doesn't ride very well. And I felt like that's happened against Leinster at critical points by La Rochelle, by the Bulls. There've been teams who've said, but what if your pretty bicycle is all in pieces? I think that that's one of the problems. And what the French did is Yeah, if you decelerate in your ruck, and we talk a lot about the sort of slingshot effect of rucks. Almost no team has their best phase on phase one. It's kind of remarkable if you score a phase one try. But if you can get to phase three and everything is speeding up around the corner, it's just hard to fold enough. You just end up getting the weight of numbers. If I make every carry, every clean, and everything just goes on clockwork, and the guy carrying it is, Antonio or Miafu, physics. And I just felt like the Irish had made themselves, Andre, a little too easy to prepare for an aggressive defense. And MVA talked about what a Sean Edwards defense is. I don't know if it's so much a system or a shape like Nienaber. I think it's more of a attacking defense, like where the defense itself becomes the tool of the attack and where it launches. Just like in quarterfinal against the French, they would have taken a lot on from that loss, by the way. Sean Edwards wasn't bitching and moaning about referee decisions. He was probably watching it going, how can I do that? And they did it to the Irish. Every time the Irish had a spilled ball, every time the Irish had anything go wrong in their attack, I kept thinking, and now they're going to score at the other end. And by God, they almost did. The try by Louis Bielle-Biarrey following the Pinot kind of mini break and just perfect timing on Pinot's pass, and then that kick around the corner. I don't know if I've seen, from the counter ruck to the try, I don't know if I've seen a better sequence of rugby since the Rugby World Cup.
Talking about Bielle-Biarrey, I didn't recognize him without his scrum cap. It took me a while to realize.
He's so young looking.
Yeah, he looks like
he looks like a little kid.
Yeah, but geez, that guy's good. I wanted to talk to you, Harry, about your Lekkerback index almost. Let's call it that. You've got Cheslin Colby there. You've got Gridley Arendse there. Where do you rank Louis Bielle-Biarrey on your Lekkerback index?
He has to work on his scrum cap thing, because as we know, the Lekkerback, the definition of a Lekkerback is that the mysterious, mystical powers that give you your hips swivel better and you see more, you have eyes in the back of your head. Maybe there's eyes in those scrum caps, but you have to wear the unnecessary scrum cap. That makes you a Lekkerback. But okay, so we'll do an asterisk here in that maybe he's more like Asterix in the comics. Louis Bielle-Biarrey maybe had some magic potion, because I don't know how he even made that corner around Sam Prendergast, who is not slow. And then he had to fight off Luku, who was trying to defend him. I'll jokingly say DuPont would have scored that. He would have taken the ball away from Louis Bielle-Biarrey. But Louis, bye-bye. That's what I'm going to call him now. He just has, what do you call it, Andre? It's like real speed. You have people who are quick on a track. They're quick, with perfect conditions, with the lanes and the starter gun and the perfect shoes. And then you have guys who are quick on a field. And there's not much you can do in rugby, as Brian Habana will attest, if you've got speed to burn, a really good chip kick, and the ability to regather. I mean, rugby is not set up to defend against the incredibly quick wing who gets the edge, chips you, and then the ball's rolling around. I mean, you almost always have trouble there. Andre, do you think he's one of the most exciting guys to watch? Every time Louis Bielle-Biarrey's on the ball, I go, okay.
Yeah, and the skill set that he brings to the table, Harry. He chips off both feet. And it's a case of, and we might get time to go through that try of his, but that kick of his has there's a lot more thinking that went into that kick than we think. If he had to kick that straight, the space was a lot less, the line was a lot closer. So he had to wait the kick first, and he only had a short distance to beat Prendergast in. If he kicked it to the inside, the line goes away further. The distance increases for him to beat Prendergast, and he's quicker than probably everyone. It was a stroke of genius, and I'm glad he scored it, because that little 9 was trying to mow his lawn, which, like any good 9, he should do. But I'm glad he scored it, because that kick, that was a touch of genius.
Okay, so Andre, you brought some pictures. We love your pictures and the clips, because it takes the game within the game. There's a theme here. One is that the French seem to almost read the minds of the Irish, where what has been working for Ireland, and you can see why they thought it would work, I mean, they had territory. They were camped in the 22. Show us some pictures of how that attack degraded instead of upgraded as they went into the 22.
Harry, that's exactly it. And I think as we go through this, there's a reason, like you said, they would keep doing this because it's worked and they've done this for so long, they do it well. But the problem is they started off well in the game too, and then they kept going with it. But the way they implemented it was they were forced into mistakes. They were forced into not being as effective as they could be. Right. So the first one we start is the first kickoff, and in typical Ireland fashion, carried by Doris, they get into their shape immediately. Everybody's in motion, and then they kick from 9, win the aerial battle, and again get into their shape that they want to play. And if this was a sign of what's to come, I think the French was going to be in for a long day. But they had something different to say on that. So this is what I mean. Everybody's in motion once the ball gets passed to the ball player. And after that, there's multiple options at the line every single time. They go short on this one. That's off the kickoff. From there, back into that aerial battle, kick on their terms. They got a great platform. Gibson Park, a lot of time on the money. Great contest. They commit 5 players to this ruck, which helps them to win that aerial battle. And now this is where they know exactly what to do from here, because this is their plan. They want to engage and release on this part. So they want to engage those tight defending forwards, and then they want Prendergast to release that ball into the wide edges. Again, this is 4 minutes in. They're back with the ball. Again, looking for that engage and release. Into the lion's mouth. There's the engage. They have to commit to that tackle. This is the way they do it when they're not under pressure. This is the way they do it when they're playing well. Prendergast gets it. He's going to the line before he gives that release. And that commits the defenders on this side, which makes the double defending really difficult. There's the release. And then I think what happens here is Aki doesn't go to the line. He throws the long pass, and that gives the French an opportunity to get back into shape on their defense. I think O'Mahony could have gone into a bigger power line on this one. Wide ball, but again, taking gain line with every single carry. When they play off 10, they create two-sided attack. Blindside attack, setting early. Again, just taking gain line as much as they can. And then this rule, I actually want to talk about, Harry. I don't know about you, but when can you play the 9 then?
Yeah, I think they are expanding that too much. I thought Gus Gardner had a good game, but I thought this was a little bit too. We're getting a little too picky. For me, when Jamison Gibson Park picks, gets leg over, and walks away, he's already outside that zone. And if he's not, I mean, okay, then if we're always doing that, then you could imagine someone playing as 9, but let's say that they're Artie Savea, and then they get a free 3 or 4 meters. Then all he's got to do is take that same position and then just start driving into the little 9. And so you're expanding something where there was no reason. I quite like DuPont's play there. I think it's savvy and interesting.
Yeah. And if you're not allowing this guy to defend the 9, if you're not allowing DuPont to defend the 9, he's going to have a free ride to the second defender, which already closes up your defense. So I think it's something that I also agree. I think Gardner had a great game. He was on top of it, but they need to have a look at this. And then this is where the French shows how much they work and how quickly they can get around the corner. Ball off the top, keeps working onto the outside. They get a five-fold. Yeah, they got Penno and Intermac. That's part of the tackle. They get onto this side. You got three more forwards coming around that corner. And this just tells me that they knew there was nothing going on the blind side. Their homework was done. They trusted the system. They got that speed fold and they got set very early. And again, they play well when they go into the lion's mouth, get it done there. Small space for Prendergast, looking for, and I think that's the difference here, Harry. Normally, that would be kind of a tackle break. The ruck would probably be around there. It's more gain line. Against this French team, body in front, you stop right there. Really clever from Groya. He's not rolling away, so instead of putting fuel on the fire, he pulls out of the jackal, which doesn't give Gardner an angle to actually call the not rolling. So there's no extra threat. I thought that was quite clever. Nice and wide, and this is the problem. Not into the lion's mouth. Have a look at the double defending. When this happens, it's too early, not dynamic enough. There's a double defend, and that's the end of that sequence. We got 14 Irish on the one side of the field, one on the other side. That becomes really easy to defend.
It's interesting as well, Andre, that they did a lot of tendency shopping. The French, when they're at their best, they're not just chaotic flair guys. They're really planning orientated. They, as a culture, as a society, I mean, just move around in French and see how much engineering plays a part there. I was in a train station one time where there was just, for no apparent reason, a gradient measured of what the conveyor belt's degree was, MV. It was like 7.3%. And I was like, why would you even care about that? But move around in the French society and realize how much the construction, the engineering, the design of a bridge, a building, a door plays a part. And so when they're at their best, they're not running around like crazy people. They are very planning orientated, whether it's scrum, whether it's ruck, or in this case, how the Irish attack. I looked back across the percentage of time over the years that Ireland has been playing blindside, Andre, and it's nothing. It's like 5 or 6%. The French attack on the short side, 25%. Imagine the difference in that, in multiples. It's 3 times as much. And so every time they were shaped along your clips, you see it, that the French weren't worried. Because they just banked on the fact that the Irish would not depart from what they've been doing. Because why would they? As you said, it's been working. If you give the Irish only 6 penalties in a game, 57% territory, time in the 22, number of rucks, you only get steals on whatever, 3 rucks out of 99. Irish would probably say, okay, so we won that game. And then you look at the score and it's terrible. So it's a fascinating example to me of how rugby works, where the French didn't have to pad the stats. All they had to do was every time there was an attack that rolled to phase 3 or phase 4, their guys were off the floor, back to their position and ready to do a moor tackle. Like some of those tackles were not just reversed, stopped in tracks. They were taking away people's souls. And then they always knew in the back of their minds, but I just have to do this for 45 minutes. So I can push, I can throw, I can get into my throw-up zone, because I know I got Emmanuel Miafu coming on. So brilliant way to illustrate how they were thinking ahead. Usually defense is a react. In this case, it felt like it was the attack that was having to go on the back foot.
The interesting thing about the defense in particular is that with the emotion and the aggression that was on the field in the French jerseys, the composure and the flow that they had in the defense was something special. And I think in the next couple of clips, we'll have a look at that period between 10 and 16, 10 and 15 minutes, where Ireland would just on top of them in their 22, and they wave after wave, and they ended up scoring a try that was disallowed. I think that try, even though it was disallowed, it felt like a try against the Irish for them. because of the way that they had to work and just to see DuPont dotting down on the other side of the field. So I think if we can, let's have a look at the defense of the French in that period and how that had an effect on the game going forward. So with these, I couldn't cut the whole clip. I think we would have been here for quite a while then. So this is at the tail end of the first couple of phases. This is phase 7. They got a penalty for them obstructing in the maul. I think they landed in the seam, or they jumped across. They played a couple of phases, kicked it out, and on phase 7, you'll see McCarthy pick and go, Bielle-Biarrey, great spot tackle, that close to the line, and you've got an extra man outside. You need to be really sure of your read and then implement. And I mean, with the day he was having, it's probably not a surprise, but that to me was a fantastic read, great implementation. But it doesn't stop there. Have a look at him. He gets up and he makes the next tackle. And that's what I said, Harry, about the attitude and the work rate that this team showed. And that was the epitome of what the French were doing on the day. They were working to get off the ground, into space, get into motion. Have a look at that body in front. Next one. But this is where Prendergast starts going static. And I know there's rush defense. That's not a bad carry from McCarthy. That little counter ruck there just took away the flow of the attack, which gets the next runner static. And that doesn't look like Irish attack to me.
Yeah.
Again, static. He's lateral. He's not going to the line, which in turn means that Intermac can go to the next defender and DuPont can go out the back. And this is the end of that sequence. Obviously, this try is disallowed, but Harry, I think it felt like a try to the Irish because of the amount of work that they've put in. And for a while they were 5-0 down after all of that. So they come back.
It felt like it could happen again. The problem was you thought that exact circumstance will actually happen again, and they'll probably score next time.
That's right, because they were running out of answers and they went outside. You could see Aki was standing still. I showed you in the clips in the beginning. Once they get into that confident mode and they're playing well, everybody's in motion. Aki was standing still. Not expecting the ball. He wanted the forwards to keep going, and the forwards had done a lot and said, well, you guys have a go. Prendergast being really static, not getting off the line, being lateral, makes it difficult. So this is the scrum from that knock-on. They play into space. Really clever defense. Take second last, leave for last. But look at the chase from the loose forwards and 9. It's a big fight. They get the opportunity to set. Now, please have a look at this line throughout the defense. It's easy. It's been cut on the field as well. And look how the French control that gain line. Body in front, down right there, slow ball, easy fold. Chop, down, still not over that green line that I showed you. Again, look at how square they are to get off the line. Not getting near that green line. Body in front. Slow ball. Everybody set, can get square off the line. Chop and top. Still not over that line. This defense performance was immense. Look at that. Look at the punch with which they hit that. Prendergast takes it to the line. Knock on.
So excellent. That's an excellent showing of what futility does to you on attack. You know you're going to knock on. I mean, it's inevitable at some point because you got Sam running into 5 wild dogs.
Exactly. And that's why this defense performance, it just, it puts so much pressure on the Irish attack to implement over and over and over again that they couldn't see light at the end of the tunnel.
The Irish have depended for the longest time on the quick ball. So in a way, when you take away the thing that is predicated, like your predicate is quick ball, less than 3 seconds at a ruck. This is something Jake White talked about when he was a test coach, is identify your opponent's greatest strength and then attack that. Take that away and see what happens. Instead of focusing on their weaknesses and trying to exploit them, take that one thing away. I think that's brilliant. What happened there. I have no inside information about this, but I know Sean Edwards has used a lot of defensive calls inside matches, and it might have just been one. You just say chien, dog in French, and that's your swarm. And I saw that Lucy swarm on the side there in that clip, and it looked by design. I don't know how you have that many people all go. And if that's true, then Envia, that's one of your answers about what a Sean Edwards defense can do, which is picking your moments of mini blitz. It's not really a blitz out of the line. It's a blitz to a ruck. And suddenly a ruck that should be 2 seconds is 5. Or it's scrambly. And like I say, you're messing up the spokes in the bicycle.
And just on the quick ball, which you're 100% right, that's where your momentum and your go forward comes from. But there's a difference between ball available and ball played. And Gibson Park's one of the best nines to get to the ball even before it's available. And he was battling to get the ball out. The French were making the rucks ugly and difficult to handle, slowed the ball down, and we saw the result.
What's next, Andre?
Okay, I get maybe a little intro into the French attack. We can show just clips of their attack, that the kicks in behind, which has become a bit of a feature in rugby at the moment, where teams don't want wide rucks. They'd rather kick it in behind, isolate the fullback or the backfield defenders and have them kick it out or try and get a turnover. And then we can go and look at the French tries, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so Andre, we looked at the way that the Irish attack, which has been one of the best attacks in world rugby for 5 years, 6 years, how it was degraded, and that was a plan. What was the French plan to launch their attack? Because they had to soak up a lot of pressure, and sometimes when you soak up that much pressure, then it's your time to attack. You're not in the shape. How do they get into shape? What is their shape looking like? And how did they develop a quick attack ball?
The French showed different pictures, but there's a particular way that they want to play. I think they still get it wrong sometimes, where they have all the backs rovering to one side. They take away their two-sided attack, and then they want to come back. They get this 5-man pod, and they play 2 passes within that pod. The skill set's amazing. Little wrap ball to Intermac, but those backs are still on their way back. So they've got to start managing that ball going back and pull the trigger at the right time. MW, this is the one I was talking about. They get to an edge, they hit the first pod available. Now we've got a pod of 5 here. 5 forwards in that. And what DuPont will do is he'll hit the head runner of the first, let's say the first part of that pod. He'll be throwing a skip pass to the second last player with a little wraparound on the 10. You need good skill set at this level to be able to get 3 passes away in this area. And the only thing the French did wrong is they just didn't get these backs around early enough. That one there, they're working hard to get onto that same side, and they were just a tad late. But There's the pass. 10's in behind. Skip to second last. Little wrap ball. If they had players in that space there, Intermac gets onto second last. They've got loads of space and speed on the edges to take advantage of that. But I think we're going to see a lot more of this shape because, again, they're engaging all of these defenders, ensuring that they preserve the space on the edge to play into. They just need to get there a bit quicker. On the next one, same thing. You get that 5-man pot again, where ball to the head runner. That'll skip to the next one. And then on this clip, you can see the 10's not that interested to play. So probably wanting to be more direct. But like I said, I think we're going to see a lot more of this. And there's so many great options that can come from these plays. While we're talking about the French defense, attack, sorry, I was quite disappointed with the Irish defense in terms of the wide ruck defense, Harry, because wide ruck is probably the worst place for an attack to be. That's where the defense wants rucks, and what happens is that's a long pass. That's a 10, 11 meter pass on the angle, which ball in the air is not a threat. They got a second long pass going, and yet Ireland's got this soft edge on the edge, not closing that space sufficiently. Get the ball away, and the French are into that space. Now this is what I was talking about earlier, where instead of keeping the ball, passing the ball, and having a wide ruck there, a lot of teams are taking the option to kick this ball and isolate the backfield defender. And this is a great example of what it can give you. He's, I don't know how you pronounce his name. Is Jigu or Jigu?
Jigu, I think. Yeah.
Jigu. He made that kick. I mean, he's on a 7-1 bench. He probably thought he needed to show some skills on the backline side of things. Made the kick, but he made the tackle.
Yeah.
Now the Irish, instead of having that wide ruck on the edge, the Irish have to set a platform, which gives them another opportunity to lose a ball, commit 2 extra players, pressure on the kick. And because of that kick, that's where the French now have an attacking platform.
That's such a good point about when people groan in the stands, and we're all guilty of it, when people put toe to ball in that kind of attack, is you have to always think about what you just said, which is an opportunity to lose the ball. So Jigu in space is thinking, I don't know what happens next. I haven't been in the situation that much, but I know what I do like, which is to counter ruck tackle. So let me make someone else be in a bad situation, and then we'll see what happens. The worst that happens is they actually clear it, and you launch an attack proper from where you want to, which is a line out in Irish off. The best that can happen is they don't clear the ball, and I'm Jigu and I'm on the star, and I take it in and I score. It's a great opportunity to exchange, preventing yourself from being in situations you don't want to be, making your opponent have that kind of sinking feeling of, now I have to go back and clean up a ball with everyone chasing me down. I thought the French also looked calm in the clips you just showed, and they knew where they were going to their spots. When I looked at the Irish defense, and I hadn't seen this is brilliant that you were able to see this. They had turned into a drift defense, which is very weird because they've been playing at Leinster and in the Irish level with Ringrose as a shooter. And there's no shooter. There's nothing. There's nothing to hurry the French attack. They had Jigu as a stand-in center, had all the time in the world to decide what he wanted to do. He could have kept the ball and steamrolled someone if he wanted to.
Yes, and Harry, the thing with what happens sometimes with those defenses is that you anticipate the carry. but they anticipated the carry so many times that they had that weak, soft, low edge on the outside, which just they created the space for that little stack attack from the French running with Intermac and those boys rovering onto the other side. And with, talking about that kicking behind, teams have got to start making plans with that, because more teams are doing that. If you get wing up in the line, or you get the 15 up in the line, the backfield covers there, he's got to field that ball. If he hasn't got time to kick that, you're going to be doing exactly what the Irish just did. You're going to set a platform, you're going to kick the ball out probably within the 22. So teams have got to come up with a plan to deal with that, because a lot of teams are choosing not to have wide rucks when the ball goes into the edges. They're choosing to kick the ball in behind. They're chasing, they're beating the opponents, turning around, and they're putting teams under pressure at the back.
Very difficult to get your best ruck cleaners all the way out to the trams when you're going. We have 2 long skip passes like that. I mean, it's almost impossible. So that makes sense. It also makes me think that on the day, not on the season, but on the day, they might have missed low. The Irish might have missed low more than the French missed DuPont, because in that exact situation, you're not going to see Low be that far behind the defensive line and passive. He's going to make a play one way or the other. He's going to make a play. It might be a bad play, but he's going to do something.
Same with Hansen.
And exactly. And if he's the one cleaning up, he's going to have a much bigger exit kick. So I do think that there are moments in rugby where you cannot get the pressure relieved. And those clips show how once Ireland did get under pressure, they were unable to release the pressure. Whereas when the French were in the same position in the first 12, 14 minutes, they seemed to be able to release the pressure by dominant tackles, by counter rucks.
Right. Let's see some box office. Some tries here, André.
That's a great call. I'm ready for you. And what I like about the French attack is their variation. They maul off a 4+1, they maul off a 5+1. This is depending on what you want to call it. I don't get into too many arguments with forward coaches. This is either a 7-man with 9 in front, so 7-man special, or it's an 8-man. Whatever you want to call it, it's up to you. But ball at the back, and what this means is that most of the power is going to be at the front of that build. And they've got one guy on the open corner trying to control the water in the bowl. And it's kind of like they want to get over the 15, move towards the poles to try and open up that blind even more.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was a back ball, Harry, I think the plan, this was deliberate. And obviously with DuPont there, he can play, he can kick, he can cross kick from there. He can probably drop goal like John Robbie did in the olden days. He can make any plays from there. So he's always assessing there. He's looking into the blind. Prendergast just sees it happens. But look at this little play here. Once they decide to go, if this was deliberate, I'm not sure, but that little play there just blocks the defender from getting to that side. And the effect that has is that they're left with just Gibson Park and Prendergast on that side. Prendergast trying to solve this on his own goes, and obviously DuPont's good enough to read that and release the pressure. So again, good construction of the try and good heads-up rugby, seeing where the space is and taking the ball there. The next one, this is the one I was talking about. And Harry, maybe you want to come in here about the maul taking the legs away of the Irish.
I mean, this is the thing about these mauls, is the degree that you have to work to just not be infringing. You saw on the one you just showed how if you can execute that at the back, then the touchline is no longer an extra defender. And in most maul defense, what you're doing is shoving almost immediately towards touchline. You hope for the ref to say, use 1 verse 1 and then go. This time you're all alone, and they created a scrum. Basically, it was basically a scrum, a dominant scrum. 7 meters away from the try line with 20 meters blind. Impossible. I mean, at some point, if you just make the right pass, you're going to score. And this one you're about to show is more of a classic one. I'm going to drive you.
So, MW, we're getting to that box office. Just be patient, my friend. So 4+1 maul, not something you see a lot, but the advantages of this is that you get a lot more players into the maul than they can have. So what you've got there, you've got a 6 versus 4. And once you get that moving, he shows them to join. They get on there. That little inside option. They get the advantage. Now, this is where, excuse me, this is where it comes in about the legs being taken away. Have a look at these boys who've just worked to defend that maul. They were outnumbered. They were moving backwards. We all know backwards walking on your quads, how difficult that is. And it shows in this clip. So they get twofold there, but 5v nothing on the blind. Those boys are just staying there. Having a rest, trying to recover from that maul. Narrow carry, right? Again, those boys staying there. Go deep clean, takes Porter with him. They get no fold. Now they've lost more. Getting onto Prendergast, again, slow fold. And then they release it into the edge. Do whatever it takes to get on top of them and keep the gain line going. Into that space, Aldred on the gain line, quick ball. Irish never get time to set, and this again. Those boys there, they anticipate the carry. Skill set of the French good enough to let the ball go. And even in that part, this little stack attack. And once they get that seam, they tend to flood that, they flood that channel with players, and then they keep the ball alive with guys just running onto it, and we know what the result was there. So again, well constructed, but I do think the Irish let themselves down with, they could have recovered on that defense and prevented that small little tackle break, which inevitably led to that try.
Yeah, but it's a good example of how for 45 seconds they turned those guys into statues. And they were just statues on the field, and actually, in a way, that's where the French just went, green light. And I love how they, of all the other teams, they went in right there where most teams would have gone out and said, "Okay, so now you got the whole trams open." They cut in, brilliant.
Yeah, well spotted. And then off the Irish line out, and this is the one I was talking about, Harry, where. Have a look at this great launch. They get off dummy maul. What is that? That is like 6-7 meters over the gain line. Quick ball's available. They slow it down to go to the box kick. This is kind of like taking a 5-iron to hit the fairway, and you drop it into the water. Because now Gibson Park kicks it too far, and you think, well, now we just need to consolidate. Ramos does brilliantly, yeah. Picks the ball up, little kick ahead to try and keep this ball. The Irish, I think, they commit 6 players to this ruck, and they still lose it. Again, their plan is, I thought Pinault might have butchered this when he didn't pass this with all the support on the outside, but he knew exactly what he was doing, trying to get outside Aki. Great take, and this is it, Harry. That little kick was a touch of genius. The distance to that part of the line compared to that part of the line is a lot further, which means that he can kick the ball a bit harder, but also it gives him more space to beat Prendergast in, and that's all he needed. He even took a wider route, and like I said, I'm glad he scored the try and not the 9, because those little bastards, they like to poach stuff like that. Right, this is the intercept one. Again, body in front, probably get closer to what they want. Not dynamic enough, not the animation is not good enough, the motion is not good enough. Intermac gets off Prendergast, and what that means is that Ramos doesn't have to build his way or make his way in to defend Prendergast. He can move on to the next player, and obviously, I mean, they got probably 4 different ways of scoring this try, and they choose the one where they give it to Ramos, and Penal gets the try. He apparently is he scored the same amount of tries as, I can't remember, Harry, you'll probably know the stats. He equalized with someone in terms of the amount of tries for France.
Of all time, yeah. That moment of Sam near the poles, you almost imagine a André Pollard in that situation, just running to the pole, like realizing that he's got soft shoulder of Ramos. Ramos is already trying to cheat, and he just got to run, put his head down a little bit, and go right there to the poles and knock. There was a Pumas try against the Pumas where he did that. He just take the guy over with him. At worst, you have a reset ruck 2 inches from the try line. And because earlier in the match, Sam had continued to choose not to do that, and he became more of a pivot and less of a runner. Over time, the defense knew they could cheat more. So I think Ramos absolutely knew that it was okay for him to give the soft shoulder.
But again, the detail of the run inside wasn't good enough. Intermac double defense. Prendergast felt that pressure from the inside and felt like he had to release that ball earlier, which I think if Intermac sits on that, Ramos Prendergast probably walks over. But because Intermac gets on that inside, Ramos feels that he's fine. He can get into that space.
Oh, it's fascinating, and I think you look at the bodies on the field and you realize who can see what in the moment, who's able to play in the frenzy. And I really enjoyed watching how Pinot took that moment on. It looked a bit mad, but I think everything that Pinot does looks a bit mad. But like you said, I think it was instinctual. But I think if you watch that and you draw it up at the beginning, you say you've got to let it go through the hands, 1, 2, 3, you're away. But I don't think you would have been, number one, because of the touchline. Number two, the angle of the kick, you're right. It's like you're fighting a guy who's much bigger than you, got much bigger reach, whatever. I want to fight you in an open field. I don't want to do it in a small box. And he was in a box, and rangy Prendergast could have easily shepherded him out. But suddenly it was now we're in an open field, and I'm an Australian shepherd dog, and you're whatever. You're one of those the Afghan hounds or something. Like suddenly I've got the advantage. I'm going to get to the ground quicker than you.
Right, thanks, Harry. Thanks, Andre. That was illuminating. I never thought I'd enjoy a Six Nations match that so much, and especially going to the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts of it. So thanks for that. Harry, you and I are going to be talking about, the prospects for the Lions, what this past weekend meant for some players, Lions prospects, including Sam Prendergast. Andre, we'll be talking again soon. Thanks for your time. Let me get cracking.
It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.